Most people spend their entire lives avoiding difficulty. Not because they're lazy, not because they don't have ambition, because their brain has been trained to treat hard things as threats, and the brain is very good at following its training. So good that most people never even realize what's happening. They just know that when something difficult presents itself, there's a pull towards something easier, a reason to wait, a justification for doing it later. A very convincing argument why now isn't the right time, and they follow that pull. Again and again, thousands of times over a lifetime, and they wonder why their life looks the way it does. Why the things they want keep staying just out of reach. Why other people seem to be able to push through difficulty in a way they can't. The answer is not willpower. Willpower is a finite resource. It depletes. It fails under stress. It cannot be the primary mechanism for doing hard things at scale. The answer is something different, something more fundamental. The actual goal is not to force yourself through hard things. The actual goal is to rewire how your brain categorizes hard things, to shift them from the threat category to the reward category, to make difficulty feel less like something to survive and more like something to seek. That shift is real, it's achievable, and understanding how it actually works is what I want to walk you through today. Let me start with something that most people get completely backwards. Most people believe that motivation comes before action, that you need to feel ready, feel inspired, feel like doing the hard thing before you start doing it, and they wait for that feeling, sometimes for years. Here's what's actually true. Motivation almost always follows action, not precedes it. The feeling of wanting to do something hard almost never arrives before you start. It arrives after, sometimes immediately after, sometimes a few minutes in, sometimes after you've pushed through the initial resistance, but almost never before. And the people who consistently do hard things have learned this. They've stopped waiting for motivation to arrive. They've accepted that the feeling of not wanting to start is not information about whether they should start. It's just the brain's default response to anything that requires significant effort. It's not a signal, it's noise. And they've learned to act through the noise, to start before they want to, because they know from experience that the wanting shows up after the starting. This is not a small insight. This is the fundamental mechanism that separates people who consistently do hard things from people who consistently almost do hard things. The ones who almost do them are waiting for the motivation. The ones who actually do them have accepted that the motivation is on the other side of starting. And they start anyway. Here's the second thing you need to understand. Your brain is a prediction machine. And it predicts the future based on the past, specifically based on your recent past. So if your recent past is full of evidence that you choose comfort over difficulty, your brain will predict that you will choose comfort over difficulty. And it will generate feelings and thoughts that make comfort feel more appealing and difficulty feel more threatening to make its prediction come true. Because the brain is trying to conserve energy, and it conserves energy by steering you toward familiar patterns. Patterns it has learned to expect from you. But here's the crucial insight. You can change what patterns the brain expects from you by changing your recent past, by building a track record of doing hard things, even small ones, even when they're uncomfortable, even when everything in you is pulling toward the easier option. Because every time you do the hard thing, every time you act against the pull toward comfort, you add one data point to the pattern your brain is tracking. And over time, those data points accumulate, and the brain's prediction changes. It starts to predict that you will do hard things. And when the brain predicts you will do something, it generates feelings that support that prediction. It makes the hard thing feel more natural, more like what you do, more like who you are. This is not overnight. It doesn't happen in a week. But it happens. And the mechanism is simpler than most people think. You're not building discipline. You're building a track record. That changes what your brain predicts about you. That changes how doing hard things feels. One data point at a time. Let me talk about something that I've observed consistently. In people who've built things that matter, who've pushed through difficulty at a level that most people don't, they have developed a specific relationship with discomfort. A relationship that most people never develop. Because most people experience discomfort as a stop sign, as a signal that something is wrong, as information that this path should be reconsidered. The people who consistently do hard things have reframed discomfort entirely. They experience it as a signal that they're in the right territory, that they're at the edge of their current capability, that something real is happening, that growth is occurring, not as a reason to stop, as confirmation that they're in the right place. This reframe is not pretending discomfort doesn't exist. It exists. It's real. The difficulty is real. The resistance is real. The friction is real. The reframe is about what the discomfort means, not whether it's there. And meaning changes everything. The same physical sensation of difficulty, interpreted as danger, produces withdrawal. Interpreted as progress, produces engagement. The discomfort is identical. The interpretation determines the response. And the interpretation is something you can consciously change. Not easily, not immediately, but through consistent practice of asking a different question. When you hit resistance, instead of asking, is this too hard? Ask, what does this resistance tell me about where I am? And answer honestly, am I in the territory where real growth happens? Or am I just uncomfortable? Because discomfort and productive difficulty are not the same thing. And learning to distinguish between them is one of the most valuable skills you can develop. Here's something that changes how you think about doing hard things. The concept of identity versus behavior. Most people try to change their behavior directly. They decide to do hard things. They set goals. They make plans. They commit to habits. And for a while it works. Until the motivation runs out. Until something disrupts the routine. Until life gets complicated. And then they fall back into old patterns. Because the behavior was never anchored to anything deeper than a decision. And decisions fade. The people who sustain difficult behavior over long periods of time are not relying on decisions. They're relying on identity. On a self-concept that includes doing hard things. On a story about themselves that makes difficult behavior feel natural, feel expected, feel like what they do. Because when a behavior is part of your identity, the pull toward it is automatic. You don't have to convince yourself every morning. You don't have to fight the resistance from scratch every time. The identity carries you, and building that identity, that self-concept of being someone who does hard things, is not a matter of affirmations. It's a matter of evidence, real evidence, accumulated through actually doing hard things, even small ones. Every time you keep a commitment to yourself under difficult circumstances, you add evidence. Every time you choose the difficult right thing over the comfortable wrong thing, you add evidence. Every time you push through resistance that your brain is generating, you add evidence. And that evidence accumulates into an identity, into a self-concept, into a story about yourself that makes the next hard thing easier. Not easy, easier, because you've done hard things before. And you know you can. Let me talk about the environment, because this is the thing that most people dramatically underestimate. Most people try to do hard things through sheer mental force, through willpower, through determination, through deciding hard enough that they're going to do this. And they put themselves in environments that make that decision harder to execute. Environments full of easy alternatives, full of comfortable distractions, full of signals that pull toward the easier option, and then they wonder why their willpower keeps failing. The answer is that willpower is a muscle. It fatigues. And you cannot sustainably out-discipline an environment that is working against you. The people who consistently do hard things are not people with infinitely stronger willpower. They're people who have designed their environments to make hard things easier and easy things harder, who have removed the most tempting alternatives from their immediate environment, who have built physical and social structures that support the difficult behavior, who have made the easy things slightly more inconvenient and the hard things slightly more automatic, because small changes in friction change behavior dramatically. Making something slightly harder to do reduces how often it happens significantly. Making something slightly easier to do increases how often it happens significantly. And if you design your environment around these principles, you stop fighting your own brain every single time. You build a structure that does some of the work for you. This is not laziness. This is intelligence. Because the goal is not to prove how strong your willpower is. The goal is to do the hard things, and any structural advantage that makes that more likely is worth having. Here's the mechanism that I think is most powerful, and least talked about, the dopamine system. Your brain releases dopamine in anticipation of reward, not just in response to it, in anticipation of it, and what your brain anticipates as rewarding is learned, it's trained, based on your history of what has produced positive outcomes, which means it can be retrained. If you consistently pair doing hard things with a genuine sense of satisfaction, if you consistently recognize and acknowledge the feeling of having pushed through difficulty, if you celebrate the completion of hard things in a way that registers as genuinely rewarding, your brain starts to anticipate that feeling. It starts to release dopamine in anticipation of the difficulty, rather than in anticipation of avoiding it. And that shift from the brain rewarding avoidance to the brain rewarding engagement is what changes the experience of hard things fundamentally. It's not that they become easy. It's that they become something your brain is oriented toward, something it expects to feel good about, something it generates energy for, rather than resistance against. The practical application is simple but requires consistency. Every time you complete something hard, stop. Don't immediately move to the next thing. Take a moment to consciously register what you just did, to feel the satisfaction of having done it, to let that feeling exist fully, before it gets replaced by the next demand. That practice of conscious acknowledgement, repeated consistently, trains your dopamine system to associate hard things with reward. And over time, your brain starts anticipating that reward before the hard thing is done, which generates motivation to do it, which is exactly what you were trying to create in the first place. Let me talk about one more thing. The role of meaning, because all of the mechanisms I've described, the track record building, the identity development, the environment design, the dopamine training, work significantly better when they're connected to something you genuinely care about. When the hard things you're doing matter to you. Not because someone told you they should matter, because they're connected to something you actually value. Something that gives you a reason to push through difficulty that's bigger than the difficulty itself. People do extraordinarily hard things for meaning. Things they would never do for money alone. Things that seem irrational from the outside. Things that require sustained effort over years in the face of repeated difficulty and failure. They do these things because the meaning makes the difficulty worth it. Not comfortable. Worth it. And that distinction is everything. When hard things are worth it, your brain treats them differently. It allocates more resources to them. It generates more energy for them. It produces less resistance against them. Because the value calculation has changed. The difficulty is the same. But what you're getting for it has increased. And your brain is always running that calculation, even when you're not aware of it. Which means one of the most powerful things you can do to make your brain crave doing hard things is to connect those hard things to something that genuinely matters to you, not something you think should matter, something that actually does, something you would keep doing even if nobody was watching, even if nobody was impressed, even if it never produced external validation. That connection between the difficulty and the meaning is what makes sustained hard effort possible, over years, through failure, through uncertainty, through the moments when everything is telling you to stop. Here's where I want to land. Your brain does not naturally crave doing hard things. It craves comfort, safety, familiarity, predictability. Those cravings are not character flaws. They're survival features, built into every human brain, but they can be worked with. They can be retrained. Through building a track record that changes what your brain predicts about you. Through reframing discomfort as a signal of productive territory rather than danger. Through building an identity anchored in doing hard things rather than just deciding to do them. Through designing environments that reduce the friction on difficult behavior, through training your dopamine system to anticipate reward from completion, and through connecting hard things to meaning that makes the difficulty worth it. None of this is quick, none of it is painless, but it compounds. Every hard thing you do makes the next one slightly more natural. Every data point you add to your track record shifts the prediction your brain makes about you. Every time you push through resistance, you become slightly less afraid of it. Until one day you notice something different. The hard thing that used to require enormous effort to starts pulling you toward it. Not because the difficulty disappeared, because your brain has learned to associate that difficulty with something it wants. That's the shift. That's what forcing your brain to crave hard things actually looks like. Not a dramatic transformation, a slow accumulation of data points, of evidence, of a different story about who you are and what you're capable of. Built one hard thing at a time, starting with whatever is in front of you right now, that you've been avoiding, that you've been waiting to feel ready for, that your brain has been telling you can wait until later. It can't. Later is where most people live permanently. You don't have to.